Hi, everyone. My name is Andrea Richardson, and welcome to another episode of Disrupt, Delete, Reset. I am here with my co host,
Taryn Williams Clark.
and today we have a very special guest, a man with a plan. Taryn's going to introduce him in a moment. However, today's episode is called Find Something Safe to Do. And I know when I say that, it makes it sound like I'm about to tussle with somebody. But this episode is about psychological safety and really evaluating when your psychological safety is at risk and keeping in mind that it's a non negotiable for you, whether at work, in relationships, or in your personal life. So, when environments become fundamentally unsafe, what can you do? What should you do? And I'm going to kick it to Taryn to introduce our wonderful guest.
Hi. So today we have a gentleman named Dave O'Connor. Now, you may not know who Dave is, but I bet you know a lot of the companies that he works with. And he's worked a lot with the executives to give them the ins and outs, the ups and downs of navigating the corporate world, as well as anything else they need to do. So, Dave, I'm going to pass it to you. Thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
Hi, Dave. Thank you for joining us. And so, where are you joining us from?
I am joining you from, at the moment, sunny Lake Forest, Illinois.
Okay. Sunny Lake Forest, Illinois. I feel the Chicago, Illinois area, a vibe in the room between Dave and Taryn. I'm definitely cornered. So, Dave, let's just jump right in. Let's talk a little bit about your personal life and your creative pursuits. So, Taryn gave a very international spy introduction of you, but tell us in your own words, like, what's your passion and what you do?
Yeah, my passion is helping people get out of their own way, helping people be more honest with themselves and with the people and the systems around them. And the way that I do that professionally is through coaching. And I do that with a couple of colleagues named Mike Tamayo and Elaine Lean. And the way that
Shout
I
out
do
to
that,
Mike and Elaine. Shout out.
yeah,
Hi,
what's up, Mike and Elaine? I love you guys. And the way that I live that out personally is mostly through humor, having fun with friends and family, and not letting much slip through the cracks. And I sort of am the devil's advocate and the poking little brother and the critical friend, if you will, to lots of people in my life.
So it sounds like Dave runs a really tight ship, but he also holds everyone accountable in his life. Taryn, I know you all are friends. Tell us a little bit about how you know each other.
Sure. So I'll jump in here. We want to talk about find something safe to do. So, Dave is a Renaissance man. He's a man of range, and I was on the stop of one of those within the range, and we worked at a PR firm together. And I would call him one of my first work. Probably, I have two work husbands, so he was one of the work husbands, and he has a lovely wife. People, and I adore her. So let's not get anything twisted. Different episode about work relationships, but no, Dave is one of my good buddies, and we talk about find something safe to do. Right, we found each other at the right time in that place. And Dave, you can speak more to that if you want. It was a place that was very aggressive, I'll say. It was a place that was not psychologically safe. And I found Dave, and Dave found me. He definitely became a safe space for me there. And I've known him a long time too. Fun fact, Dave was actually the first person at work that I told that I was pregnant. And he really
Wow.
stepped into work husband father.
Aw, that's sweet. But can you talk a little bit
So,
more about that? Because I've often heard that that's a very challenging time. Like, you don't want to tell your employer too soon, and you don't want to tell people at your job too soon. Like, what was it about Dave that made him like a safe space to help sort of be like a partner with you on that journey?
yeah, certainly. And it sounds crazy about, the episodes find something safe to do. And we met in an environment that was not safe for us. It was not psychologically safe. It wasn't professionally safe, hell.
Yikes.
And
Yikes, y'all.
especially, and I don't want to down the place. It
Yeah.
doesn't matter. Like it's a solid place. So people can put the math together and figure out where we were. It was a fine place. It was a fine place to, get our teeth, get our feet wet in the space, but it was definitely cutthroat, especially at the age that we were. And I like to consider myself, I had a child in my 20s, and I was still super junior there. And it was a space where you knew you were going to get worked half to death. And so with that being said, and finding Dave there and creating this safe space. And I mean, okay, look at me, look at Dave. Do we look like we maybe should be friends, not friends, you know? And he's literally one of my favorite people in the world. So I think it's also, as we say this, like what may not look safe, you know, we can dump into race dynamics, gender dynamics, all we want, background dynamics. And I think we should with Dave because he has a beautiful background story.
Mm.
I found a safe haven in him.
Aw,
Mhm.
Dave, we love you. Thank you for being a safe space, clearly for her and for others, including your clients.
Mhm.
But Dave, what do you want to tell us a little bit about what you know about Taryn and your relationship with her?
Yeah, realness. Like, one of the things that made the space that we shared unsafe for me was whether I was projecting it or it was real. Like, there was a lot of gaslighting and all that kind of stuff in that atmosphere, and a lot of like subterranean kind of energies going on that were unsaid but kind of felt. And I never for a second experienced that with Taryn. I just got realness from day one with her, and then I was able to give that back to her. So she just was like a port in the storm. I had moved to Chicago, and that particular office we worked in while I was dating somebody who was in the company at the time.
Not you laughing, Taryn.
Sorry, that's for drinks. That's for the live show later. Continue, Dave.
Hold
My
it
bad.
together, Taryn. And back to you, Dave.
It was, I should interview myself on my own show called Messy Genius, because it was quite a messy time. And I was a messy young man. But with the realness that I got from Taryn, I also got a lot of grace and like a lot of patience, not a lot of judgment, but some like straight talk. It's just a really good balance. And that was what I was used to. That's what I looked for in real people and real human beings. And I found that with her. And so we never really worked together on any projects inside the company. So we could be really pure in that way of our friendship, just unfolding as friends and not as collaborative partners. That could have been great too. I don't know, but we didn't have that noise involved. And so we were just able to really, so I was really able to find support and some truth in my friendship with Taryn. Yeah.
Thank you, Dave.
You guys are amazing. Now, Dave, I don't know you as well, but what I know of you, I adore also. I do know that the influence of your family upbringing has really shaped the way that you approach life. I know when we spoke earlier, you talked a little bit about how you have a habit of reading the room when you walk in, right? And kind of gauging the vibe, basically to anticipate how you're going to respond. Like, can you talk a little bit about how you do that, why you do that, and if there are any tools that you can offer to people in this effect?
Yeah. Well, I want to also say that there's some amount of that I'm trying to unlearn, because it is, there's something called precognitive anxiety, which is essentially like building up fictions and then having anxiety against the fiction rather than just being present in reality. And, but that was a safety mechanism and a protection thing that I did develop really, really early on, because a couple things. My dad had cerebral palsy. It affected his whole body. It affected his speech. It did not affect his mind. I think that's part of why I am able to leave room for the unexpected, or what more that can be there with a person than just what we see on the surface. He was often prejudged as being retarded, and the guy had a master's degree and 2 wives, so he did pretty well. Now, every room we walked in, every restaurant we went to, every social gathering, I had to kind of clench up and read the room and try to gauge where we might get some incoming fire and where my dad might go on the offense. And I'm just going to be straight, like make me very uncomfortable, to say nothing of whatever his experience may have been as well. It was a different time. We're talking about like the late 80s, 90s, when we were young people. When I was young, we had
I wasn't even born, Dave. I wasn't even here yet. No, I'm just kidding.
Whatever makes you safe.
So at the risk of aging myself, it was a different time in some ways, but it wasn't in others. And it's like where we wrap our heads around maybe reducing some amount of prejudice we have for one group of people, we still have to reconcile it with other groups of people. Disability rights and disability accommodations were just coming online in the 80s and 90s. And I was like always sitting sidecar anytime I was with my dad and my stepmom to a guy who could take anything at any moment from anyone that wasn't comfortable with him being in their space because of his disability. So that just caused me to really like be a social reader early on and try to get a sense of, who's with us, who's against us, who doesn't get us, who's going to need some softening and some cajoling, or do I need to be the joker somewhere? Do I need to be invisible somewhere? Do I need to go and be a bully somewhere? Like these are all things that, for better or worse, I was navigating in my head super early on, just by virtue of having a parent with a disability.
Yeah. So you mentioned, you said a couple of things that really stood out to me. I think it's when you said you walk into a room, you had to assess, right? So you already feel like you're walking, and correct me if I'm thinking about this incorrectly, you're already walking into an unsafe environment. So when we talk about finding something safe to do in this particular episode, it's this idea of creating a safety space for you or for oneself when you could be, and I'm going to call it enemy territory, or was perceived as enemy territory. But you also just mentioned of how you became all these different, you invoke these different emotions. You didn't know if you had to be a protector, a bully, a hero. You said some other ones that I can't remember, to be really honest with you, but team, I know you all remember. So I actually want to hear from both of you when we talk about this idea of find something safe to do. It's not the idea of being safe. That means like steer away from danger or steer away from what seems unfamiliar, but like, how do you create a psychological safe space when the environment itself may not be conducive to what is going to encourage you to win and be successful? Dave, we'll kick it to you first. Or actually, Andrea,
I'll go first, because when you talk about that, I think about code switching, right? As a Black woman in a corporate space, I'm usually the only one walking into the room. And I find myself essentially, to Dave's point, like either being funny, right? To disarm people, or either finding a way to grant them extra points because I'm trying to navigate and like fit in to a certain extent, right? I think that's a little bit of code switching in order to almost make myself feel safe enough to show up authentically. I don't know. And so on the flip side, sometimes I feel like walking into those rooms and code switching causes me to sort of reduce my authenticity to kind of blend in. I don't know. What do you think, Dave?
Well, I heard this wonderful quote once: you can't be angry and curious at the same time. And if that's true, then I would say that it's impossible to also be the joker and be authoritative or an expert at the same time. You just can't be these multiple personalities all at once. And if you're investing time and energy in walking into a room being the joker to soften the space for others because of how you show up and need to, right? Mm-hmm. Where is the room for you to also be your authoritative self?
Yeah.
Now, is that the idea you're doing it because you're trying to make people feel safer in your presence, or are you doing it because you're trying to be safe?
So for me, it's because I'm trying to feel safe in the space.
Okay.
That's interesting, because for me, I'm trying to make them feel safe. And I think we're going to get into the race and gender dynamic, right? I think I'm leading with this assumed, because you talk about assuming a certain situation or assuming enemy territory. You both kind of spoke about that, but I'm assuming that if I walk into the room and I'm the only one, the automatic stereotype that people are going to think is, oh, she's walking in here as an angry Black woman or an aggressive Black woman. So I'm technically trying to come in as a fuzzy, warm person
trying to do
to
something to
make
disarm.
them feel safe, right? So I think it sometimes depends, right? It depends on the room, and it also depends on the individual. What do you think, Taryn?
I want to hear Dave. He's ready to go. Go, Dave.
Go, Dave. Go, Dave.
Go.
I said this to a client the other day, and he was like, "Do you have your recorder on?" I said, the antidote to assumptions. The antidote to the pitfall of assumptions is curiosity.
What?
Unpack that.
All right.
Come on, Dave.
Yeah.
Unpack it.
So assumptions cause us to fall into so many pitfalls, like miscommunication or prejudging someone else because we're assuming how they may be judging us, or withholding a part of ourselves that could have been more productive, useful, or impactful in that space because we're assuming how the setting receives us, rather than somehow leading with curiosity. So what, like, the most literal sense of that curiosity could sound like, is anyone in this room right now uncomfortable with me being a Black woman right here?
Ooh, but isn't that confrontational, Dave?
Hell yeah. So that's the extreme, right? Oof. Maybe the extreme is even further. Maybe it's, who here thinks that because I am a Black woman, I'm also aggressive and angry and I'm going to try to dominate the scene, right? You could, right? So, but there's curiosity. Okay. Some other versions, some lighter versions, some perhaps a more like collaborative version, or even maybe a less assumptive version could be, is there anyone in the room who needs to share anything about how they're showing up today and how anyone else in the room is showing up?
Oh, nice. But Coach Dave, guys, we got to get the information on that. You made me stop and think. And not too many people are able to do that mid-production. But come on, Dave.
Look at you dropping all knowledge and tea. What else you got, Dave? Yeah. All right, we talked about, so I'm gonna, again, we're gonna continue to be provocative, and I know I wish we had more time, so we might need to part two. We'll probably have you'll see Coach Dave again. Don't worry.
You'll see Coach Dave.
But this is idea. So I love what you said, right? Because it's assumption versus curiosity, or not versus. Yeah. Do you think that you're able to do that from your position? Like, is that part of that? And you talked about this when there's just,
well, I'm authorized to be, I personally in my professional role am authorized to be curious. Okay. Meaning I am contractually authorized by my clients to be the curious one with them. Maybe a more interesting question is, for those of your listeners who are in positions of leadership, is, who are in their organizations are they authorizing to be curious? And to what extent are they authorizing themselves to be curious? An example, do they have a subordinate who isn't bringing it all the way for one reason or another? How much room does that subordinate have to be curious about the nature of their role, or the way they do their job, or the nature of the way that that leader communicates with them, right? So there's a two-way street here, I think, with the curiosity. And the thing with power and authority is that if you have authority, others will wait until you bestow it upon them to participate in that authority. So you got to give it.
Yep. So tell me how that works personally. How does that work in your personal life? How does that work in your friendships, in with your family? Like, how do you flip that personally, or can you?
Great question. I don't know if this is a good example, but I had to authorize myself to be not a people pleaser with somebody that This is like
Stumped you. I got
this
you.
is so first world problems. But I had a friend several years ago who I would occasionally play golf with, and he was absolutely unbearable to play golf with
Why though? Why was he unbearable?
because he drank a lot and he was on the phone a lot. He never watched my shots. This is like basics. Is like, and you could drink all you want on the golf course, I suppose, but like you got to watch your partner's shot. Otherwise, your partner has to pick his or her head up mid swing, which is the opposite of what you want to do for a good golf swing. But he'd lose his ball in the woods and then take an excessive amount of time to look for it rather than just dropping a ball and getting back into the round. I mean, it's just like every single basic thing that could disrupt the flow and the pace of play, the guy did. And he was oblivious to it, lacked some self-awareness. And I just like ate it and ate it and ate it and ate it. And to be honest with you, I think I was responsible for evaporating any sort of a safe space with this guy because I wasn't speaking up for my needs. I didn't authorize myself to say what I needed to say to him about how he played with me. I mean, until eventually I did. And when I did, he was like, "Oh my God, dude. I can't believe I did that. And I can't believe what he said was, I can't believe you would never want to play with me again." But like what he meant by that though is like, I can't believe I played in such a way that would make my friend not want to play with me again. And
that's kind of the way how I feel about playing Uno or Dos with Taryn, but that's for another
You
episode.
don't have to play with me again, so that's fine.
But Dave, so in that situation, did the friendship end or
it didn't end there? It did end later, but not for the golf reasons.
Okay. So another question is that now, man, I know we're about to, we'll have a part 2. Don't worry. So this person has been exhibiting behavior that was not safe. So there was never a safe environment. And this person was leaving you little Easter eggs or crumbs, it sounds like, potentially. Right.
It's actually I kind of poo-pooed this example, but it's a kind of a great microcosm in a way, because on the golf course, there are appropriate ways to play the game, and there are rules, and there's a score. There's a time constraint. There are people in front of you. There are people behind you. It's a little ecosystem of play. And when a playing partner doesn't like fairly cooperate with those rules of play, there is no play. The literal word of play, being able to freely engage in something without purpose or a need for a specific outcome, gone. Because all I wanted to do was for this guy to get his shit together and just play by the rules, and then we can have some fun. So I couldn't have fun there. And so I'm going back to thinking about the times that Taryn and I were in the same company together. And theoretically, if the currency of what we delivered for our consumers at that company was creativity and attention, it's no surprise to me now that I had very little fun in creating that creativity and attention on behalf of our consumers, because I didn't feel like people played fairly. And then as a 24, 25, 26-year-old, I'm thinking this, not like an 8-year-old. So I think
go ahead.
Yeah, there's just something you guys were asking a little bit about earlier, is like, how do you make this, is it your responsibility to make the space safe for you or for others? If you are a leader, it's both. If you are a team player, an individual or a subordinate, it's definitely make it safe for yourself. And if that environment, it's like the constituents and ingredients of that environment just are unequivocally stuck where they are, toxic or ugly or unethical, what have you, and that doesn't work for you, like, you are too small to affect change in that setting. It's time to find another setting. And that might take a lot of work and time and risk, and you might not find it the first time you go look for it, but you're on your way to finding it and to creating, the workspace or the personal life space that is more attuned or aligned with what you do value and where you can have fun and play. It's actually a remarkably good barometer for if you're in the right places. Can you play there?
Beautifully said. Sometimes the strategy is not endurance. Sometimes it is departure.
Yep.
And sometimes that is for the self-preservation, right? Of your own existence.
Psychological safety.
Yeah, for your own psychological safety. And that goes, in the work examples, but also in your personal and relational portion of your lives. I guess I would ask you guys, from our conversation, what are one or two things that kind of stuck out to you from what we've discussed today, if anything?
I'll go first, and I'm summing up something that Dave said using the conversation about the friendship. You said the word rules, like playing golf. There's a set of rules. What I took away from that is that you both are individuals, whether it's in a professional space, personal space. You both have to be aligned and agreeable to the rules, because if someone isn't playing by the rules that we are assuming, going back to the assumption that Dave talks about, then it can't be safe, right? Because I think I'm playing one way. I think we're agreeing to play one way. I'm assuming we both understand and agree to the terms and conditions, but turns out we don't. And then when someone is going against that assumed rules, I'm not safe anymore. I can't play this game of golf. I can't show up in the professional space this way. I can't show up. I can't because I am now feeling unsafe, not knowing my next step. So that was a big thing for me is, is everyone aligned and agreeable to the rules? And it can be on the flip side. I may not be. So I need to be very clear and folks to say, hey, I'm not aligned to these rules, whether I'm saying it vocally or whether I'm assessing it internally, and that there helps determine what kind of space I'm going to be in.
Love that. Dave, do you have one or two?
Yeah, one of them for sure is the exchange that you and I had, Andrea, regarding your need at times to shape the room compared to my need to shape the room as well. But I do think that we're probably both down at the bottom level trying to shape the room to assure our own comfort. And maybe I'll leave it there because our methods may be different and our needs may be different, but to know that, to know that there's just a bunch of adults getting onto a Zoom call or into a room together, and they could be anywhere from 25 to 65 years old, and everyone still has a need to feel safe and comfortable and present in that space, it's not going to go away until that group knows that they have it with each other. I think that's a big piece of what I'm taking away.
Yeah, and I think that's where your points around curiosity were really good, because it pushes the room, right, to basically discuss it and, tackle the elephant in the room. I think also for me, we talked about this a bit, Dave, in this concept of having agency over the times when you can exercise the opportunity to either determine whether you take charge and evaluate whether or not you can actually change the room, or figuring out when it's time to leave, right? I do have the idea of either being a thermometer or a thermostat in my mindset every single time. So I think that pulls through in the example that I gave around, to your point around shaping the room. So I think we're similar in that aspect, but at some point, sometimes you have to determine whether or not if you're going to be able to make the impact and make a change, or if you're just going to completely just be spinning your wheels and being in an environment that's just not good for you and your overall wellness.
What do you mean by thermometer and thermostat?
Yeah.
Real quick.
Some of us have the ability to come into a room and change the dynamic of the room. So we can be disarming. We can change the room from being a sort of negative environment to a more positive environment. I wholly believe that I have that ability and power, and it takes a lot of work to be able to sort of recognize, for example, who's the quietest voice in the room and allowing them the opportunity to speak. You know, in the example that you gave earlier about Dave being a safe space, he was the one that was able to sort of shift your environment and change the temperature on what you were experiencing by essentially being your partner through the process of people learning that you were pregnant. So some people go into the room and they become whatever the temperature is, right? So they either become mean or they become aggressive, etc. And then there are others like me and like Dave and like you, we go into the room and we assess what the temperature is and we say, you know what, it's a little too hot in here. I'm gonna make it a little bit cooler because ultimately we will all be a bit more comfortable. So that's what I mean by that.
And one little story before we wrap up and going back to, I love you call Dave. He was the thermostat, right? I don't know if you remember this day. So I actually didn't tell anybody I was pregnant. Dave knows this. I just walked around just getting bigger and bigger, didn't say a word. And I remember Dave one time came to me. He said, you know, such and such came up and asked like, hey, is like Taryn pregnant? And he was like, I don't know. I was probably 6-7 months at this point, but it was still this idea of someone, him serving as a safe space.
He was your shield, right?
He's my shield. There was no reason for anybody to know. Like if she didn't announce it, I don't know. Maybe she just ate a big burrito today. Don't come ask me. But it's, again, talking about the psychological safety. And I think also a key takeaway, and I think this is where Dave, as Coach Dave, probably comes in as a great source of expertise and advice and support for the executives that he works with, is creating this safe space for them to navigate some touchy situations, and also for him to offer them tips and tools on how to navigate safety psychologically, not only for themselves, but for others. And that is something that I know Dave specializes in. So I always remember that story. And he was like, no, someone just came with like gossipy. He's like gone somewhere with that.
Yeah, he shut it down. I love that. Dave, tell the folks listening how they can find you and how they can get in contact with you.
Yeah. Website, upside.partners. No com, no .net, just upside.partners. You could find me on LinkedIn and also on Instagram at Hey Coach Dave.
Well, hey, Coach Dave, we really appreciate you. This was such a rich conversation, and I know we'll have you back. Hopefully, we'll be able to be in the same room the next time.
We'll make it happen.
But we thank you so much, and thank you to our listeners and our viewers. We appreciate you as well.
And always remember to what? Comment, subscribe, like, share, go listen. We need you.
Yes, and we're on Instagram. Follow us on Instagram, but we're also on YouTube, Spotify, and on Facebook. So thank you all.
All right, thank you. Thank you so much, Coach Dave.
Thanks, Coach Dave.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.